in upstairs near Arkansas.
Now we're ready to go. Okay, everybody, if you guys can hear me, I am just very happy to see you.
Hello.
Yes, very happy to see you. How you doing tonight? Good. Hey, Corey, how you
Hello.
doing?
I'm doing good. So happy to be here.
Glad you're here. Denise is here. Rangavanti's here. Bhavananda. Let's see. Brock is here. So who else am I missing? Am I missing anybody?
Brock.
Brock. Okay. So, all right, guys. Well, I don't know if all of you got to see the program last time. I don't think you did. What I'm going to ask you all to do, if you don't mind, for now, is kind of mute your setting. Okay? Could you do that? All right. I think everybody's probably muted. Okay. All right. So this is the Bhagavad-gītā study that we've been doing, and we're just now started doing it. We're not so expert at this, obviously at Zoom, but we're learning. So as we go, we appreciate your patience and thanks for waiting for me to get online. Apparently, I had started another meeting accidentally. I did not mean to do that. So that's my fault. Okay. But this chapter is the actual second chapter that we're going to be talking about tonight, and it's the contents of the Bhagavad-gītā summarized. So the contents of the Bhagavad-gītā summarized is very elaborate, and I'm going to recommend that everybody, when you get a chance, please read that. And you can go to vedabase.io. Again, that's vedabase.io, and you can log on. And you can actually press Bhagavad-gītā and the text and everything will come up. And if you want the Sanskrit's there as well. And you can avail yourself of all of this information. So that is free, by the way, and there's no charge. You know, normally you have to buy a Bhagavad-gītā. So this is a great opportunity for you to avail yourself of not only the Bhagavad-gītā, but other books like Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ramayana, which I just went through after Ram's appearance day recently, which was wonderful. And it's very, very enlivening and very enlightening. You got it? All right. And then another thing too, you can go to prabhupadvani.org. That's prabhupadvani.org. So Vani means the instructions of the spiritual master. So prabhupadvani.org is also available to you, and you can listen to it if you go to Amala Bhakta Swami. He does a dramatic reading with musical background of these books. And if you're in the car, or you're riding along, or whatever it is, give you a chance to go through these books again and again and again. Okay. So she's writing it down on the thing, and I appreciate that. Rangavanti's taking care of the chats for us. So thank you all for doing that. So chapter 2 of the Bhagavad-gītā. So before we start chapter 2, if you don't mind, I think we should do just a little, there you go. I think we should do a little bit of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So do you know that mantra? Does everybody know that mantra? Om, all right, say after me. Om Namo.
Om Namo
Bhagavate.
Bhagavate
Vasudev.
Vasudev
Vaya.
Vaya.
Yeah. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya means the name of God is Vasudev. So Vasudev indicates the son of Devaki and Vasudev. So he's the son of Vasudev. And if you've ever read the story of Krishna's appearance in the world, in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll find that information. So in this book, the Bhagavad-gītā, it's always saying Bhagavan Uvacha. So Bhagavan Uvacha is the same thing as Bhagavate. Bhagavan means God. So God said, Uvacha means said. So in this particular chapter, what's so interesting is that God himself has appeared, and we set this stage in the last Zoom that we did. So if you get a chance, you should go back if you can find that Zoom. Rangavanti, I don't know if you could send that to them, but if you could send that to them, that would be great. And then that way you could catch up. you could watch that previous edition, and you can understand that Krishna was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and two opposing sides, kind of good and evil, if you will, or dharma, adharma, was fighting. And that's, obviously a standard, typical theme of the material world that we're living in. There's always a fight between good and evil in our own lives. And so Bhagavad-gītā also depicts that fight that we're having, not only internally, but externally, and throughout the universe, actually. And this is a recurring thing. So Krishna comes again and again and again and again to the world. And every millennium, basically, God comes in an incarnation or an avatar. We set this up last time. And he comes for two reasons primarily. Paritranaya sadhunam means he comes to deliver the saints, the sadhus, those who are practicing spiritual discipline. Vinashaya chaduskritam means, and he also comes to annihilate the miscreants. A miscreant is a person who lives outside of the order of the universe, obviously. So, and our jail cells are full of those kind of people, if you know what I mean, because they don't want to stop at the stop sign. They want to do every kind of thing that causes chaos in society. And then it says, Dharma samsta panartaya, sambhavami yuge yuge. So yuge yuge means millennium after millennium, yuga after yuga. He comes to reestablish the principles of Dharma. So Dharma is not necessarily religion. Dharma means the eternal function of a soul. So the eternal function of a soul is actually love. And Krishna describes that in this chapter, in the last verse of this chapter, in where he teaches us how, even at the hour of death, we can enter into the kingdom of God at that time. So why would we want to enter the kingdom of God? I mean, that's a pretty good question, right? Yeah. All right. Well, the earth is filled up with four maladies, and they're known as birth, okay, death, old age, and disease. So we have these four maladies: birth, death, old age, and disease. Now, nobody really wants old age. Nobody really wants to be diseased. And certainly we don't want to die. So there's a reason for that. And Krishna will describe what that is in this chapter. And it is that we are immortal, eternal, living sparks, parts and parcels of the Supreme. In quality, we're one with God, but we've covered ourselves with an illusion. It's called Maya. It's the material world. So in the material world, we're thinking I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a this is my family, this is my nation, this is my religion. Of course, all these things are endlessly mutable, and they can change from day to day to day to day to day. We talked about it in the last class. You could convert from one religion to the next all you want. You know what I mean? But you can't convert from the fact that your immortal soul is connected or yoked, that's called yoga, in loving service to God. And God's in loving service to us, by the way, because everything that we see comes from God. All these benefits that we have, the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water, the sunlight, everything, the taste of the food, the aroma in the air, all of this will be described in the Bhagavad-gītā later in other chapters. But for now, and guys, I want to play this musical thing for you. My lawnmower guy decided he was going to come at 7 o'clock at night. So he's outside and he's wearing it out, man. He's going back and forth with the lawnmower. So I might wait a minute and just cover a little bit more of this chapter, and then we'll do some music. Because once I turn
We can't hear him.
You can't hear it. Because
No.
once I turn it off and I put it on for musicians, you'll hear all of the background noise.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying? So I'm going to go ahead and continue on discussing Bhagavad-gītā, and those guys will be through in just a few minutes. I got a little bit of yard. Not too big. So, all right. So the question is, how do we transfer ourselves back to the spiritual world, where life is eternal, where life is full of ecstasy or bliss, absolute knowledge of everything, and in a form that's ever fresh and youthful? So there's the reason why you want to go back to the spiritual world, because that's your real home. You've come here, and at this point, we're trying everything conceivable to enjoy our lives. Unfortunately, there are some things that interrupt our enjoyment, and part of that is birth, death, old age, disease. The other part of it is threefold miseries that we can't control. Miseries caused by nature, like volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes. We just had that here not too long ago. And additionally, by other living entities like animals, bugs, things that would eat you, bite you, whatever it might be, or other people even, or our own selves, by creating bad reactions for actions that we do in ignorance. So ignorance is our enemy. We have to have the light come on. So as yogis, we always pray before we start discussing it, Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitanjena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So Gurave means there's a teacher who comes. He's pure at heart. He's not out to exploit us. He's bringing the message of God, unbroken, unchanged. And in that message, we can find ourselves. We can find our true nature. That's called self-realization. And that is another expression for that is a tato brahma jigyasa, or who am I? Why am I here? Who put me here? Where can I go when I leave? What's the purpose of all of this, like that? So that's what Bhagavad-gītā is meant for. Now, we set this up in our last chapter, so I'm not going to go through all this again. But you can go back and read how Arjuna ended on a battlefield in a great fratricidal war. It was a civil war. It was against his own relatives, his own teachers, his own friends, like that. So in this particular chapter, there are 3 or 4 things that we're going to be discussing. The first thing is that Arjuna's, what I call Arjuna's lament. So he was lamenting in the previous chapter, and he was saying, why do I have to kill my relatives? Why do I have to kill my teachers? Why is this war going to happen? I would rather beg than go kill the people that I love. And also, if we kill them, the kingdom will be tainted with their blood. How could we possibly even enjoy the kingdom? So he says, I would rather be a beggar than fight this war. Now, he is a Kshatriya. Kshatriya is a holy warrior. And a holy warrior fights on the purposes or principles of truth only. Doesn't fight for power, money, prestige, wealth, control, like that. That's all demoniac, according to the Vedas, the Bhagavad-gītā primarily. It says that if we're fighting for fame, profit, adoration, distinction, control, power, like that, that's not the right motive. So in this chapter, Arjuna's lamentation comes to a head, and he says, Krishna, I won't fight. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to fight. So he falls silent. So then Krishna begins to instruct him after he accepts Krishna as his disciple. And that's our situation as well. We want to become disciples of God, obviously. And God is for everyone all the time. We're all his children. We don't have to convert from one thing to the next. We're already God's children. So our relationship needs to be restored with our Father. We need to understand the mind of the Father so that we can, follow in line with what's really good for us, what's good for the planet, what's good for all species, and what delivers us back home. Because we are lost in this material world. So the prayer that I was praying, Om Jnana Timarandasya, means that I was born in darkness, and the spiritual master came to open my eyes with a torch of knowledge. To such a spiritual master, I offer my respectful obeisances. So those obeisances means that we show respect to those persons who would deliver us from this condition we're in. It's just like we're in an ocean. Somebody's tossing us the line. Our only hope is to grab it, and then they'll pull us out. So that's the idea. Unfortunately, so many bogus people throw in lines, and we're not being pulled out, but we're being drug under even more. So there's so many people who are teaching so many things that may or may not be what you might call the absolute truth, but instead they're relative truths, and they're involving the material or mundane world. So this chapter is designed to deliver us from the mundane world of 3 modes, ignorance, passion, and goodness, to the transcendental mindset or pure goodness, which has no karmic reaction, good or bad, in the material world. So we're going to learn that, and Krishna will explain the difference between the soul and the material body. So he'll also explain what is transmigration of the soul in this chapter. He will explain selfless service to God and to each other. And he will also explain the characteristics of a person who's self-realized. In other words, knows that they are their soul. A person who understands the soul and knows how to live within that state of self-realization. So the first thing that Krishna says to Arjuna, oh, and I think the lawnmowers are stopping, so we're going to chant in a minute.
Hey,
But,
Gayatri, can I ask you something? Sorry.
yes, go ahead, please.
Where can I find that prayer that you're talking of?
I will have Rangavati send it to you.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you.
And there's some other prayers too that we're going to chant. And if you need a copy of those prayers, we'll be happy to send a copy of all those prayers to you. And thank you for asking that, Corey. Appreciate it.
Corey, if you look at the chat, I have written it down. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
No, not that one. It's the one you were talking about.
Om Jnana. Yeah, Om Jnana Timaranda Shah is the one.
Oh, that one. Okay, okay.
Yeah. And Rangavati will be
I
answering.
can do that one. That'll be a longer
0.5
prayer.
milliliter.
Yeah, she'll be answering the chat. So all right. So when we start out, the first thing that happens is we find that Arjuna is filled with compassion for these people that he's got to kill. His mind is depressed. His eyes are filled with tears, and he tells Krishna that he won't fight. So Krishna says to him, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They do not lead to higher heavenly planets, but to infamy. So he's addressing Arjuna directly with, the condition of Maya that he finds himself in. But Arjuna comes back and tries to fight it out with Krishna and says, no, it's better to live in the world by begging than to live at the cost of the life of my teachers, tainted with blood. We talked about that. And then he goes on, he says to Krishna, now I'm confused about my duty. I've lost all composure due to weakness. This is going to be a king of the world, one of the greatest mighty soldiers of all time. He's completely locked in confusion. He doesn't know what to do. His bow has slipped from his hand. He's in a state of depression. And in this condition, he tells Krishna, now I am a soul surrendered to you. I am your disciple. Please instruct me. So this is the best way we can all approach the Bhagavad-gītā. All right. If we have this attitude towards God and we say, well, I'm your disciple, please instruct me. We will receive information from within our hearts. We'll receive information from the guru who will come to you. We'll receive information from the sadhu, which is a person who's a holy man living the life and giving the information out. And we'll receive information from the Shastra. So the Shastra is the scripture, or the Bhagavad-gītā, the Srimad Bhagavatam, like that, the Bible. There's so many scriptures in the world that we can receive information from. So he's asking Krishna, please tell me what's best for me. I don't know what to do. And we don't know what to do in this world either. We just find ourselves with no way to drive away the grief that we experience. Now, I don't know about you guys. Hopefully you've never had any grief, but I can tell you grief is prevalent. If you turn on the TV, you'll see how much grief is going on daily. And if you've lost any loved ones, you know that grief. If you've lost, anything that's happened to you, been abused, whatever it might be, all of that creates a state of grief. So we're in grief, and Arjuna says he cannot drive away the grief. He doesn't know what to do. So Krishna looks at him and he goes, okay, Arjuna, now that you've surrendered to me as my disciple, I will instruct you. And the first words that come out of the mouth of God, which is Bhagavan Uvacha, which we talked about a minute ago, is while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of your grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. Now take that in just 1 second. Why wouldn't you lament for the living or the dead? I mean, you would think that you would be lamenting for the living and the dead, right? I mean, you would. So what does Krishna say right off the bat? And I'll tell you one of the things that Krishna does with Arjuna in the beginning. He goes through Sankhya philosophy, or Sankhya yoga, which is the analytical study of the condition that we find ourselves in. It's an analytical study. So the first thing that Krishna says to Arjuna to quell his doubt, and by the way, if you guys don't mind muting, I'd appreciate it. And so what happens is he says to Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings assembled in this great battle, nor in the future shall any of us ever cease to be. So he establishes immediately in the first verse that comes out of his mouth. And by the way, each verse that God speaks is mantra. It's the same thing as mantra, and it's fit to deliver us back to the spiritual sky. That's the voice of God coming. Normally, you don't hear much about the voice of God. It's like a voice in the sky or burning bush or something like that is all we get. But here, 5,000 years ago, God himself descended as the king, literally, and as a cowherd boy, and lived a life that's recorded where we can find out what he said, what he meant, and what that means to us. So he says, the next words are, and I'll do the Sanskrit because this is the mantra that will give it to you inside your heart. It's Dehinosmin, Yata Dehe, Kaumarang Javanang Jara, Tata Dehantara Praptir, Diras Tatra, Namuyati. What that means is that as the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. All right? Is that heavy? Pretty heavy, huh? It's pretty heavy. When you think about it, you're an immortal soul, you're passing in this body, and you're transmigrating from one body to the next. Just like you transmigrate from boyhood to youth to old age, you're going to transfer into another body at death. He also says the self-realized soul is not affected by that change. Self-realized souls are stita dira. Stita dira, that means sober. Dira, sober. Stita, unmovable. Their consciousness is fixed. So we're going to discuss in this chapter how we can become stita dira at the time of death and how we can go back home, back to the spiritual world. So in the next verse, he says, the problem is you're being affected by this material body as if that's what you are. Okay? So the material body is not you. You are not the body. Sting wrote a song after reading Bhagavad-gītā that said, we are spiritual, we are spirit, not material. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that song. We are spirit. Or you heard that one, right? So we are spirit, not material. So we are not the body, but we identify with the body. And if anything happens to the, we're disturbed. We're disturbed, right? We're just, if somebody kicked your car right now, right? You'd be like, what are you doing? You'd feel the pain of the car because you do identify with the car. So in the same way, we identify with the body. So Krishna says, Matra sparsasti konteya, sitosna sukadugada, agamapayano nichas, tangstatiksa svabharata. And that means don't be affected by happiness, distress, or any impermanent thing, because they're very much like the winter and summer seasons, and they arise from your senses of your body. And we must learn to tolerate these things without becoming disturbed. If we become disturbed by every little thing, our life then is set into a spinning motion where we feel like we're victims of every single thing that happens to us. Okay, and our minds are distracted by these. I'm too hot. Oh, somebody this. Oh, somebody that. So we're constantly thinking like that. So he says, that which pervades the entire body, know to be indestructible. Indestructible. No one can destroy the immeasurable soul. There's never birth nor death at any time. The soul is never come into being, does not come into being, will not come into being. He's eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So he's trying to give Arjuna a little bit of analytical knowledge so Arjuna can work with this situation, because all these people on the battlefield have already been put to death by Krishna, or God's will. Because evil, if you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. You've heard that. But evil has to be erased, because evil will affect the happiness of those persons who are living in harmony in the material world. So these people they were criminals, they deserve to be punished. So just like we said, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old and useless ones, so the soul accepts a new material body, giving up the old and useless ones. So that's going to happen today, tomorrow, 10 years, 100 years. But let me ask you a question. Has anyone survived the material world? You're on that long black train, y'all. That's right. And there's a stop coming. This may not be your exit, may not be your station yet, but it's coming. So, but just know that the individual soul is unbreakable, insoluble, can't be burned, can't be dry, everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, eternally the same. That's who you are. So you have to learn to identify with your real true nature, not the material body. Because let me just say one thing. We see nations pitted against one another, families pitted against one another, brothers pitted against one another, wives and husbands pitted against one another. We see, political parties pitted against one another. We see religions pitted against one another. We see women pitted against men, men pitted against women. Come on. Come on. Really? Now, that will never stop until we begin to identify with the soul. Because as long as we think we are the body, we will relate to all of these external designations which cause a problem. So then Krishna goes on to say, but even if you thought that you were always being born and always dying, what difference would it make? Because for those who are born, death is certain. No way around it. You're not getting out. So just, don't worry about it. So he's even telling him that, because all living beings are unmanifest before they're born, and then manifest in their interim state. And then after their death, they're annihilated. So what is the need for lamentation anyway? So he's talking about the soul. All right. So now, but he also told Arjuna that if you don't perform your duty as a religious warrior, one who's fighting on the principles of truth, surely you'll be neglecting your duty, and you'll incur some sin or karma on your own, because it's your job to protect the world against these people. And if you look at what we talked about in the last chapter, you'll see that they tried to steal their kingdom. They tried to burn their house down. They banned them from their country, wouldn't give them anything to manage. They tried to disrobe their wife, Draupadi, all of these things that they did. And additionally, the generals who had esteemed Arjuna would think that he had left the battlefield out of fear, and they would consider him insignificant. And for a man who's already been honored, dishonor is worse than death. What could be more painful? So he discusses that with him as well. So he tells Arjuna this, and this is the beginning of what we call karma yoga. He said, do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering loss or gain, victory or defeat. And in so doing, you will never incur sin or bondage. What? So, okay. So in the next few verses, actually the verses between 39 and 53, if you read the book, you'll see that what we've been through so far there's some primary verses between 11 and 30. So verses 39 to 53, Krishna discusses work and devotion. Rangavati, are you muted? You are? Okay. So, so he discusses. Hey, there's Simon.
Hare Krishna. I'll have my camera
Oh.
off for a little bit.
Oh, that's
I'm
fine.
listening.
Have you been listening in? Very good. Okay. So, so at these next verses, Krishna he's already done the analytical work with Arjuna. Now he's going to discuss how Arjuna could elevate himself. So we know there's good karma, bad karma, and no karma. So good karma will deliver you to the heavenly planets where life is a paradise, very similar to the spiritual world, but everyone there still dies. Even the demigods die. So if we have to understand that we have to go to God if we actually want liberation. So the point is that so if you have good karma, you go to the higher planetary systems. If you have bad karma, you go to the lower planetary systems. So there's three modes that dictate where you're going to end up. And it's pretty simple. Mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness. Mode of ignorance delivers you to hellish life in lower planetary systems. When you look out at night, don't think that there's nothing there. There's plenty there. And all of it is filled with life, literally. You may not know what it is. You may not have the senses to see it. You may not, be able to detect it because it may be different than the life you're living, but the life is there. So the point is there in the hellish planets, people are suffering unlimitedly. In the middle planets, which are the mode of passion, people are suffering and enjoying. Kind of a little bit of both, almost like neutralized, a little bit of both. Okay? And we see that here. That's the mode of passion. And in the mode of goodness, people are just enjoying. They live long lives, not so much disease, even death is not so painful like that. So in the heavenly planets, that's the condition. We've even seen that in this world to a certain degree, because people can go from those three different modes here. But Krishna is recommending to Arjuna to become transcendental to those modes. Transcendental. What? Transcendental? What the heck? So how do you do that? So Krishna then describes the characteristics of a person who's in transcendental consciousness. So before we get to that, what I'd like to do is kind of give you a few little verses, because this is 72 verses. We can't do all these. We don't have time for it. So first of all, Krishna explains, thus far I've described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it to you in terms of working without fruitive results or without karma. Because when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of your karma, of the work you're doing. And he also says in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. In other words, you don't lose anything. It goes in your permanent spiritual bank account. Whereas no matter what you gain in the world through good karma, you will lose it at the time of death. So this is a permanent spiritual bank account. So, and then he says also that a little advancement on this path of devotion could protect you from even the greatest danger. So try to imagine what that is. Animal species falling in animal life, which is characterized by fear and, devouring one another like that. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit more about this, and that way you guys can kind of see what we're talking about here. So the Vedas mainly they discuss the three modes of nature, those three modes I just described. And they're primarily concerned with people who are looking to elevate themselves to higher planets, or happier life, or a more beautiful wife, or more money, or more power, or whatever it might be within the material world. And that's called karma kanda. Karma kanda means I still have karma that I'll suffer or enjoy. And all of it comes to an end when the bank account runs out, when your good deeds run out. You have to fall back down to the material world. So what Krishna says, you don't want that. What you would rather have is, I'm in a meeting. I can't talk right now. I have to call you back. All right, I'll call you back. That's my lawn man. He came at just the wrong minute. You know, what can you do? So, but what Krishna says is, if you don't want karma, then you should abandon all attachment to this world. You should realize it's not yours anyway. You were born naked, you're going to die naked. Whatever you have is a gift of Krishna. That's why they call it the present. There is no past, there's no future. Those things don't exist right now. So what you have is the present, and that is a gift of God, right? So it belongs to God. So whatever you've been given, you should give thanks for that at every moment. That's called Bhakti Yoga. But it begins with Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga is work without attachment to success, failure. And such equanimity is called yoga. So yoga means to be equipoised in the mind. So Krishna says to Arjuna, keep all abominable activities. And you can just figure out what abominable activities are. We're not going to get into that in this meeting, but there's plenty of. He said, keep all of that far distant from you by devotional service. And in that consciousness, you should surrender yourself to God. You surrender yourself to God. Wow. Sounds easy. Sounds easy. It may not be quite as easy as it sounds. And we can discuss how to do that as we go through Bhagavad-gītā. But surrender is just a simple matter of giving up. All right? Giving up my desire for God's desire. And I promise you, God's desire is going to be better for you, better for the world, better for everybody than anything you could come up with. No question about it. And we'll discuss what that is later. But Krishna tells Arjuna that a man who's engaged or a woman who's engaged in devotional service rids themselves of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. So you're living on a equipoised platform. Okay, let me give you an example. So when you work for God and you make everything that you do dedicated to God, that provides no karmic reaction. None. So you don't have to come back here to enjoy or suffer the reactions of your work because you've acted on behalf of another. Just like if you were a military person and you acted on behalf of the United States government and you went and killed 1,000 people, you come home and get a parade. You don't go to jail. So you think, well, this killing's a pretty good thing. I think I'll just keep it up. You kill one person, you go to jail forever. They put you in the electric chair. How's that? Because you acted on your volition, not on the government. So when you act for God, the same thing happens. You are given no reaction. Your reaction is spiritual. So everything you do, the contribution is all spiritual. You go back to the spiritual world. So in the past, Krishna says there have been so many sages who've already gone back home, back to Godhead, back to the spiritual world, by performing these activities of devotion. Okay? And they've ended all their miseries by doing that. So I'm going to skip through some of this because we do need to kind of move along. So here's a point, though, that I want you to hear, and this is an important point. So we shouldn't be disturbed. We should know that the material body is doomed for destruction. I mean, we're going to become ashes. We're going to be dust, this body. You will never die, and who you are inside will remain, and you'll go into another body or you'll go back to the spiritual world. So the idea is, let's go back to the spiritual world. So we don't praise or despise what comes to us. We accept it as our lot, and we stay equipoised. We keep working in the spirit of devotion. And we restrict ourselves from abominable activities. Okay? So here's something that you'll see as we go along. And the problem in life is lust. I mean, let's just be flat out. Okay. Love is not the problem. I promise you. Because love is a selfless act. Lust is a selfish act. And lust is designed to rob someone for your own pleasure. You take advantage of people. Sometimes people, perform crime or whatever it is for the sake of lust. And in all these great histories like Ramayana and stuff, we see that lust was the cause of the demise of those demons. Just like we see here in the Bhagavad-gītā, Dhritarashtra and Dronacharya wanted to steal the kingdom from Yudhisthira, the rightful king, and therefore this whole battle had to happen. So one should learn to restrain their senses, keep them under the control, and be conscious of God in all things. Now, if you go back to your training in Ashtanga Yoga, and I know a lot of you guys have done that, you'll see that it's yama niyama. That means giving up everything that's bad for my spiritual life or my progress in yoga, accepting everything that's good. And then dharana, dhyana, means concentration, getting the mind fixed so I can be quiet enough to consider God. Be quiet and be still and know that I'm God. That's a thing in the Bible. So these things are there. So we have to be of steady intelligence. We can't be disturbed by every little thing that comes our way. We have to know that these things are happening in the material world and the modes of nature. We didn't necessarily do it, but maybe we had some karma we're dealing with. So that's the way that works. But Krishna says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. From anger, complete delusion. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. And when memory is lost, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down to the material pool. So we have to control our minds. We can't just be like dogs running around, and it's just that you've seen dogs. They see something, they run over here, they run over there, they run back there. They see a she dog, they're going for that. They see trash, garbage, whatever it is, another dog, they're ready to fight. We can't be so disturbed by that. We have to control our mind in yoga. So yoga is to bring the mind back. Just like the tortoise withdraws his limbs within the shell, we bring our mind back to God. And we dedicate ourselves again to God, and we're grateful for whatever comes our way, because it's all a gift, and it's meant for our education. So we don't want to fall down in this material pool that Krishna is talking about. So it says, for one who is thus satisfied, the miseries of the world cease to exist. Think about it. Everybody's taking a pill. They're drinking some beverage. They're trying to, from some addiction or find some way to become happy, to be free from misery. But none of it's working. Trillions of dollars are being spent annually on trying to quell misery, but none of it is working. None of it. So the only way to be free of misery is do not feed the fire of lust. The fire of lust, the more you feed it, the higher it grows. The more frustrated you become, the more dissatisfied you become, the more angry you become, the more bewildered you become. And wrath, look, people are so wrathful now, they go out and I'll take as many with me as I can. We read about it every day. So we have to go inside. We have to bring ourselves to this point of peace. And Krishna says, one who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind. And without this, there's no even possibility of peace. There's no possibility. And are you going to be happy without peace? No. There's no happiness without peace. So the point is, we have to, even though our senses, if we let them concentrate on their object, will be swept away like a strong wind will sweep away a boat on the water. So what we have to do is bring that back under the control of the self. And it's just like this. Krishna says like this. So the rivers are pouring into the ocean. But the ocean, even though it's being incessantly filled, it's not disturbed by that. Okay? Ever being filled, but always still. The person who can do this alone can achieve peace, and not the person who strives to go run after every sense desire. I need more money. I need more power. I need more fame. I need more sex. I need more alcohol. I need more drugs. I need more whatever. You can throw as much of that against your life as you want. Cigarettes. I mean, God knows. People are smoking 3, 4, 5, 6 packs a day. Are they happy? So what is it that can make you happy? What makes you happy is to get over it. Get over those things. Calm yourself down. Understand that this world is going on, and there's going to be a storm one day. It's going to be sunny the next. You can't change it. So just deal with it in a positive way. Bring yourself back to center. Concentrate on God. Accept everything that comes to us as the gift of God. So the chapter ends this way. A person who would give up all desires for their own selfish gratifications, who lives free from all desires, giving up all sense of proprietorship, devoid of false ego, that person can attain real peace. And that is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a person is no longer bewildered. And if one is thus situated in that God consciousness, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So we covered a lot of information quickly. And this is one of the most important chapters in the entire Bhagavad-gītā, because it's the whole Gita summarized. I mean, there's a whole chapter on karma yoga. There's a whole chapter on meditation, dhyana yoga. There's a whole chapter, on jnana yoga. There's a whole, I mean, we're going to get to it individually. But Krishna wanted to go ahead and give him the whole kind of what he was about to teach him in a nutshell, just like we did in college. They would give you a kind of a summary of what the class was going to be about. That's what this was about today. And so very, very, very important stuff. So what we've covered, Arjuna's lament, okay? Krishna's response, which is to explain analytically that there's nothing to worry about. You're eternal, it doesn't matter. And then karma, or work and devotion, the 3 modes of nature, and surrender to the Supreme Person and go back home, back to Godhead. So we've covered those items in this particular chapter. And so I want to see if anybody has any comment or any question like that. And we'll have just a small kirtan. They quit mowing, so I can turn on this musician thing and see if it works. So if anybody has any comment or question, please go ahead and lay it on me. And if you don't,
Gayatri.
go ahead. What'd you have?
Hare Krishna, Gayatri. It's Raga.
Oh, Ragaleka, Hare Krishna. Nice to see you.
It's so good to see you. Yeah, nice.
Okay, we're good. Yep. So,
Nice words.
did you have?
There should always be some question, so I'll ask one. What you were speaking of karma, bad karma taking us down to lower planets, good karma taking us to higher planets. Of course, we want to escape all of it, but what's lower, an animal birth on an earthly planet, or a humanoid birth on a lower planet?
Well, I can always depend on you to ask a question like that.
Great question.
I would say, I guess it depends on if you're the humanoid or if you're the animal. I would say they're both pretty bad. Okay. But no, there are some lower planetary systems that are very much like heavenly planets. And Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, is a demigod who's a great devotee of the Lord. And even though he's dealing with a bunch of Rakshasas, who bring punishment upon those people who deviate, he's a great, great servant of the Lord. And so there are some heavenly planets, even in the lower planetary systems. I would say that animal life would have to be a lower birth, because it takes sometimes millions of births to get yourself through all those species back up to human life. I would say that. So that's just I don't have a Shastric quote for you on that one, but we'll find you one.
Makes
Gayatri,
sense.
Oh, hey, Corey.
hi.
Hi.
As it unfolds more, because we'll go through like each of the chapters, right? Like it'll be like on karma yoga, jnana yoga. But just I don't have something exactly in this moment, but like some practical applications of like how to do it. Like, for example,
How to do what?
like how to apply Krishna's teachings to our life in the world we live in when
That's
we're
it.
not.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, Prabhupada told us, he said that anyone who wants to be a devotee already is born with certain proclivities in their life. You're attracted to doing certain things in your life that bring you a lot of happiness, by the way. And so those are things that you could give to Krishna because they're precious to you and they would be great offerings to the Lord. So, for an example, I like music. I used to sing all these secular tunes, you know what I'm saying? Rock and roll stuff, and crazy stuff. I mean, some really wild stuff. Most of it was opinion or love songs for somebody that it didn't work out with, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I can dedicate then my music to God. So that's one example, but there's plenty of examples. If you were a scientist, you could be a scientist for God. If you're a homemaker, be a homemaker for God. If you're a teacher, be a teacher for God. You can do anything. You can cook for God. So some practical things that we do every day is we try to hear. It's called Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smadanam. Shravanam means that we are hearing about God, just like we're doing now. So you're serving God with your time right now. And then Shravanam Kirtanam. Once you've heard enough, then you can start speaking. Like I've been listening for 50 years, so I got a lot to say. Sometimes people just have to turn me off, man, because I can't help it, once it gets going. But the thing is that then you hear and then you remember God. So remembering God is service of the mind, manasa seva. It's, you're serving God with your mind. So whatever you do, and if you have a job that, you can't offer to God, then you could take some of the results of that and you could give it to the sadhu, and he would use it in the service of God on your behalf. So there's all kinds of stuff we can do, and we'll get real practical about that.
Yeah.
But Prabhupada had 4,000 or 5,000 disciples. I was just one of them, and we were all heavily engaged in service. So it's no problem. It'd be easy enough to do. Absolutely. Thank you, Corey. You're so good. All right. Anything else? All right. So I think what I'm going to do, because we only have a few minutes left.
Brock, have you got a question? You normally do question. You normally have some really good realizations.
I did have a question, but it has left my mind at the moment. I was trying to find it back, but
okay. If it comes back, let us know.
Yeah, we'll stop. We'll stop what we're doing, and we'll just get your question answered. Okay. So what?
It was.
Oh, go ahead.
I do have it. The sages that have returned to Godhead, do any of them ever come back bringing messages?
Well, yeah, Jesus Christ was a good example of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that he was here and then went back to Godhead. He may just come from Godhead, because once you go back, you may not want to come back here. And it says in one passage that once one returns home, he never comes again. They do say that in the Shastra. However, if you want to do service in the world, all of the entourage, Krishna's entourage, they all come down from the spiritual sky to serve the Lord in his pastimes. So you could definitely do that. I mean, you know, as his servant. All the demigods even come down to serve in that way. So,
But they haven't actually returned to Godhead yet, right?
well, I would say that there's a little gray area about that in one sense, that everyone who died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra went back home, back to Godhead. So,
Okay.
and ordinarily a Kshatriya, just when they do any service, holy service, they go to the higher planets at least. So, but that was an actual interaction directly with God. So I'm thinking that, yeah. So let me see if you guys can hear this. I'm gonna do this for you. Okay. So can you hear this harmonium? Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to chant for about 3 or 4 minutes, just this one meditative melody. And if you'll mute your voices, then you can sing along with me in your own private space there. And I'll just repeat this a few times, and then we'll close. Okay? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jaya Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hari Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hari Govinda Jaya, Jai Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
There you have it. So thank you so much for coming. I think we've gone over our time tonight. And I'll try to do better next time. We're only like 9 minutes over, so it's not so bad. And we didn't get started till a little late. So I'm grateful to everyone for staying with us through the program. And next week on Monday night, we'll be doing Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga would be a great chapter for everybody to come and be involved in. Pre-read it, if you will, and bring some questions if you have some, and we'll discuss those topics. And Karma Yoga is a fairly short chapter, so we'll have a little more time for some music, and we'll try to do a little bit more kirtan. And but I can't thank you enough for being here. You guys are great souls. Oh, okay. You guys are great souls, and a lot of good questions, a lot of stuff in the chat. So 22 chats, that's good. And Rangavati, you're doing a fabulous job answering everyone. This will be recorded, so if you want to go back and refer to any of the topics or discussion that we had tonight, it'll be available to you online, right, Rangavati? I think so.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, that's right. Well, Facebook and WhatsApp, and I can message everyone who's taken part tonight and last week.
You guys are great souls. Great souls. You're here dedicating your time and your energy in devotional service by hearing this message, these names of God, this information, which is absolutely imperative for us to become self-realized so that we can not just die in vain again, but we can solve the problems of life once and for all and go back home, back to our eternal life in the spiritual sky and be happy. Prabhupada said, chant and be happy. So I promise you that it works. I've been doing it 50 years. I wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't for Srila Prabhupada. So I'm very, very grateful. And I'm grateful to each and every one of you. thank you again. If you have any individual questions you want to talk to me, you can get my number from Bhakti or however you like, and you're certainly welcome to call me. I'm always available to you. Okay?
Could I ask a question before we go?
Yep. One more.
You may have addressed it because I lost connection for a bit, but how do you recognize self-realized people?
Well, they say a person can be known by their activities, and a fool can be known when they open their mouth. So, so you want to know, you know what I'm saying? So you want to,
Yeah.
the sadhu, or the self-realized person, is repeating the shastra. He's not making it up. He's giving it to you straight. He's giving you the truth. You're straight, no chaser. So, so that's the idea.
Okay.
All right. All
Thank you.
Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you.
guys. We're going to end the meeting now, and I'm very, very grateful to each and every one. And please come back, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you,
God willing.
Bhagavad-gītā.
you guys. Are
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Okay, have a great evening. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Haribol.
Haribol.